Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to tackle something really tricky.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's this question of if you know you probably won't make the best choice,
Okay.
does that actually change what you should do?
Huh. Yeah, that's a good one. It's a head scratcher for sure.
It is. And philosophers call this whole debate actualism versus possibilism.
Right.
So buckle up because we're going to dive deep into the world of ethical theories today.
I love it. And it's amazing how this debate actually plays out in our regular lives, right?
Totally.
We've all had those moments where, we see the ideal path, but we also kind of suspect we might not, actually take it.
Right. We know we should do the thing.
Exactly.
But
And actualists and possibilists have very different takes on how to deal with these ethical kind of dilemmas.
well, and to help us wrap our heads around this, we asked you to think about a personal dilemma before we got started today.
Right.
And you mentioned that time you promised your friend you'd help them move. Oh, yeah.
But secretly you were dreading it, like the thought of spending a whole Saturday hauling boxes.
Ugh, the worst.
It's the worst. And that's a perfect example of this would versus should struggle.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
It seems so simple on the surface, but when you really dig into it,
Yeah.
it gets all sorts of complicated and interesting. But let's start, by setting the stage a little bit.
Okay.
When we talk about ethical theories, a lot of times we're dealing with this idea of objective moral obligations.
Okay, so objective meaning there's some kind of ultimate right answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if we don't personally know all the facts?
Even if we don't know everything, right? It's about stepping outside our own limited view and thinking about what's the best action based on all the info, even the stuff we might not be aware of.
Okay, so there's this right thing to do, even if I don't know all the reasons why.
Right.
Got it. And this whole actualism versus possibilism thing.
Yeah. It came out of discussions about utilitarianism, right?
Yeah.
Which is all about maximizing happiness or the most good or
Yep, you got it.
Okay.
Philosophers were trying to figure out does utilitarianism actually make sense logically? And that's where this question of how our likely actions, impact what we're obligated to do becomes really crucial.
Okay, starting to see the connection. So in your moving dilemma, right?
Yeah.
You knew helping your friend was the good friend thing to do.
Right.
It's what you should do. It would help them out the most.
Yeah.
But you also knew deep down, there was a real chance you'd flake.
Oh, totally.
Come up with some excuse last minute.
Maybe get sick or something, huh?
Exactly. And that's where actualists and possibilists would give you different advice, wouldn't they?
Totally. The possibilist, always the optimist, right?
Right.
They would say, you're obligated to act in a way that creates the best possible outcome. Over your whole life, even if you know you're probably going to mess up sometimes.
So even if you're pretty sure you're going to back out of helping your friend move,
Yeah.
they'd still say you're obligated to, promise to help them.
Right. It's about sticking to the ideal no matter what.
But wouldn't that make giving advice really awkward?
Oh, that's a good point.
If your friend was in that situation, would you actually tell them to make a promise they're probably going to break?
You're right. That's actually one of the critiques that the actualists bring up a lot.
Yeah.
They're a bit more pragmatic, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're look, your obligations should be based on what you'd realistically do.
Okay.
Given all the facts, about how you tend to act,
So being honest with yourself about your track record.
Exactly. So in your moving case,
Yeah.
an actualist might say, hey, you know yourself. If you're likely to back out, just be upfront with your friend from the start.
Yeah.
Maybe offer to help in a way that, that you can manage.
So it's about being honest, even if it means admitting you're not going to be the perfect friend.
Exactly. But it's actually more responsible in the long run, they would argue.
Yeah, because you're not setting yourself up for failure.
Right.
By aiming for something you're not going to achieve.
Instead, you focus on what you can do, flaws and all.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got these two competing ideas.
We do.
Possibilism, which is all about aiming for the absolute best, even if you trip up. And then actualism, which says, your obligations should be grounded in what you'd actually do.
Yep.
And it seems like both have their, strengths and weaknesses.
They totally do. And as we go deeper into these theories,
Right.
you'll see how philosophers have like wrestled with all these nuances and come up with different arguments and counter arguments. And
This is getting good.
it is. But before we get too lost in the weeds,
Yeah, good point.
let's stick with your moving dilemma for a sec. We talked about how possibilists and actualists might advise you.
Right.
But I'm curious, what did you actually do?
Oh, good point. You actually haven't said yet. So what happened? Did you help your friend move or?
Well, if you remember, I ended up telling my friend that I was feeling overwhelmed and that I couldn't commit to a full day of moving.
Oh, okay.
Instead, I offered to help them pack boxes the night before.
So you kind of found a middle ground.
Yeah, exactly.
Acknowledging your limits, but still offering support.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting to think about how that decision lines up with actualism and possibilism, you know?
Oh, totally. Because even though you didn't do the ideal thing, you still helped out in a way that worked for you. And you avoided, like, all the negative stuff that could happen if you'd overpromise.
Right, exactly. And that actually highlights one of the big questions at the heart of this whole debate. Like, does knowing you'll probably fall short of the ideal change what you should do in the first place?
Ooh, that's a good one. It has, like, implications for how we approach all our responsibilities.
Exactly.
Not just moving. Okay, this is getting really good.
It is.
Now let's dive a bit deeper into each of these theories.
Okay.
Starting with possibilism.
Sure.
What are some of the arguments for this, like, idealistic approach to ethics?
Well, possibilism has this, like, long and complex history, right? But one of the most compelling things about it is that it captures that feeling we have that we should strive for the best.
Right. Like, even if we're not perfect beings.
Exactly. It acknowledges that, like, ideals can motivate us to be better versions of ourselves.
Yeah, I can see that. But I'm already thinking about the pitfalls.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what if striving for the best outcome actually leads to a worse outcome?
Oh, interesting. Give me an example.
Because you're going to mess up along the way. Like, what if when you are helping your friend move,
right,
you accidentally broke their most valuable possession?
Ooh, yeah. That's a really good point. And it's something that possibilists have definitely thought about, yeah.
So how do they get around that?
They've come up with a few ways to address this challenge, often by introducing this idea of conditional obligations.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Conditional obligations. What are those?
It's the idea that while we have, like, a primary obligation to strive for the best,
right,
we also have secondary obligations that kick in when we know we're likely to fail at that primary one.
So like a backup plan for when our good intentions go wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like a safety net.
Okay, I like that. But I'm still wondering, like, if you were actually given advice to your friend, would you really tell them to follow the possibilism route? Like, to make that promise even if they're going to break it?
You know, that's a great point. And you're hitting on some of the key critiques of possibilism.
Yeah.
The critics say it's hard to actually apply it in real life and that it can create this disconnect between what we should do morally and what's actually, you know, realistic or prudent.
Yes. Yeah. So it's inspirational, but maybe not the most practical.
Right.
Okay. Let's switch gears then.
Okay.
Let's talk about actualism.
All right. Let's get grounded.
Yeah. What's the core idea behind this more, like, down-to-earth approach to ethics?
Well, actualism is all about, like, taking our own limitations seriously when we're trying to figure out what we should do. It says our obligations should be based on what we'd actually do, given all the facts.
It does feel a lot more, like, relatable, you know?
Right.
It's acknowledging we're all kind of works in progress.
We are, and sometimes the most responsible thing is to be honest about that.
Yeah, about your limitations and stuff. Oh. Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal of actualism now.
Good.
But I do have another question. Doesn't this potentially, like, let people off the hook too easily?
How so?
Like, if you know you're a bit of a flake, does that mean you have fewer moral obligations than someone who's, like, super reliable?
Yeah, that's a common critique, for sure. And it's one we should explore more. Critics worry that it could, you know, lead to a kind of ethical relativism.
Okay.
Where people with, like, weaker characters get held to lower standards.
Oh, that makes sense.
But actualists would push back on that. They'd say their approach isn't about, like, condoning bad behavior.
Okay.
It's more about acknowledging that we're imperfect and trying to create a system for making ethical decisions that takes that into account.
So not lowering the bar, but like
No.
finding a way to deal with the reality of our humanness.
Exactly.
Okay, this is getting really interesting.
It is. It is.
I'm eager to like dig into some more examples and see how these two theories play out.
Me too.
But before we do that, I think we need a quick break to refresh our drinks.
Yes, a good idea.
And gather our thoughts.
Our brains are working hard today.
They are.
You know, while we were on break, I was thinking about another example from our sources.
Oh, yeah.
It involves this character named Jones.
Okay.
And it really shows how hard it is to figure out what we're actually obligated to do.
Okay, lay it on me. Who's Jones, and what kind of ethical mess are they in?
So Jones has got to go to this faculty meeting at the office.
Mm-hmm.
It's important for her career, helps the department. It seems pretty straightforward.
Right, yeah. Go to work, be a good colleague. It's what you should do.
Exactly. But here's the thing. If she goes to the office, she's pretty much guaranteed to run into this student.
Uh-oh.
And it'll lead to her doing something ethically kind of shady.
Like what? Breaking a promise? Betraying someone's trust?
Exactly. That kind of stuff.
Yikes. So it's like doing the right thing, but for the wrong reasons. But with, like, even higher stakes.
Right, right. And this is where those different types of actualism we mentioned earlier come in.
Oh, right. Like Goldman, who didn't want to say you're obligated to do two things you can't both do.
Yep. She had that step-by-step way of figuring out your obligations. Remember?
Yeah, breaking down the big picture into those moment-by-moment choices.
Exactly. So think about Jones. Instead of just focusing on the ideal of going to the office, Goldman's approach would make you look at what Jones has control over at each step.
Okay.
Can she go to the office without running into the student? Can she avoid doing that shady thing, even if she talks to them?
So, like, it's a choose-your-own-adventure for ethical dilemmas.
Kinda, yeah. But what if there's no way around it? Like, no matter what Jones does, she's going to end up compromising her values.
Ooh, that's rough.
Right. Well, that's where Sobel comes in.
Another actualist.
Yeah. He's all about securable lives.
Yeah.
He says only the choices you can actually make, like, really bring about matter.
Okay.
So Jones literally can't both go to the office and avoid that bad interaction. Then she's not obligated to do both.
It's about what's actually possible, not just the ideal world.
Exactly. And then you've got Jackson and Parketter.
Oh, more actualists? There's a lot of them.
Right. They're actually okay with us having conflicting obligations, ones we can't all fulfill.
Huh. Interesting.
They think there's always at least one option that avoids breaking any rule.
Okay.
But what you're obligated to do, like, might change depending on how you frame the choices.
So with Goldman, we're breaking it down step by step. Sobel's all about what's achievable. And Jackson and Pargetter are saying, like, sometimes you're screwed no matter what, and it depends on how you look at it.
Pretty much.
Okay, it's getting pretty complex.
It is. And what's so cool about this is that it makes us think about responsibility in a new way. Like, does knowing you'll probably screw up change what you should do in the first place?
Right. If I'm, like, terrible at keeping secrets, does that mean I shouldn't even try? Even if I promise?
That's exactly the kind of tension we're talking about.
Wow. So it's not just about finding the right answer, it's about how well we know ourselves.
Exactly. And that brings us to another wrinkle that our sources bring up.
Oh, no, more wrinkles.
I know, right? These synchronic situation.
Okay, gotta use that in a sentence later.
But seriously, it's where things happen at the same time, not spread out over time.
Okay, give me an example. How does that mess with actualism?
Okay, picture this. Jones is driving, stuck in a tunnel, and she knows she shouldn't change lanes. It's dangerous. It's illegal.
Right.
But she's going to do it anyway. Maybe she doesn't realize. Maybe she's just in a huge rush.
Classic should versus would, but with traffic violations. I like it.
Right. Now, here's the thing. If she changes lanes without speeding up, she'll cause a huge traffic jam.
Okay, makes sense.
But if she speeds up while changing lanes, she'll crash into the truck in front of her.
Oh, no. A true dilemma.
Right. So based on what we know, it seems like she should speed up. At least then she avoids the crash.
Yeah, even if it causes a traffic nightmare.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But remember I said this challenges actualism.
Yeah, there's got to be a twist.
Oh, there is. What if we know Jones won't speed up, no matter what?
Oh, wow. So she's going to make a bad choice no matter what. Poor Jones. And everyone else in that tunnel.
I know, right? This is where actualism gets all tripped up.
Okay, how so?
Because on the one hand, it seems like she shouldn't change lanes. Since we know she won't speed up, that avoids the crash.
Right.
But on the other hand, she should speed up, because we know she's changing lanes anyway, and that's the only way to avoid hitting the truck. It's a contradiction.
Whoa, my head's spinning. So how do they get out of this one?
Well, Goldman, she's a clever one.
She's got to be, with all these problems.
Right. So she changes her theory again.
Okay.
Now she says you're only obligated to do the best among the things you have, like immediate, in-the-moment control over.
So like super focused actualism.
Yeah, zeroing in on the right now of ethics.
Okay, but then doesn't that just raise more questions about what control even means?
You've got it. And that's exactly where the debate goes next. Goldman talks about this ability to thing.
Ability to.
Yeah, it's about what you do if you wanted to. But not all philosophers buy that. They say, for it to be a real obligation, you got to have a stronger kind of control, not just something you do if you felt like it.
So now we're getting into free will on top of everything else.
Exactly. It gets meta fast. And of course, different philosophers have different ideas about what kind of control matters. Portmore, for example, adds in this layer of, like, rationality.
Okay, how does that work?
He calls it scrupulous securability. Basically, your beliefs and desires got to be reasonable for them to count as something you control.
So you can't be obligated to act on a crazy belief, even if you really believe it.
Right. That'd be weird to say someone should do something totally irrational.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
So it's about grounded ethical responsibility and, like, good thinking.
Okay.
And then you've got Ross, who comes in with this MWSS thing, which stands for moment-wise, wide-scope securitism.
Okay, you lost me at the acronym. Break that down for me.
Basically, he says you should always be trying to do the absolute best you can right now, even if you know you'll probably screw up later.
Oh, okay. So it's like recognizing that our choices aren't made in isolation.
Right.
They're part of this bigger story with our past and future selves.
Exactly. It's tough, but it says something deep about who we are over time.
Wow, this is heavy stuff.
I know. We've gone from moving dilemmas to traffic jams to the meaning of the self.
I need a philosophy degree just to follow along.
Right. But there's one more layer we got to add in.
Oh, come on, there's more.
I know. But this is a big one. The idea that maybe we don't just have one level of obligation.
Wait, what?
Yeah. It's not just about doing the absolute best thing. Maybe there are backup obligations for when we fail.
Okay, that actually sounds kind of comforting.
Right. A little less pressure. So one philosopher who's big on this is McKinsey. He's got this principle he calls simply LO.
Catchy.
Right. And he says, look, we have a primary duty to do the best we can, top-tier obligation. But then if we're going to mess that up, there are secondary obligations that kick in.
Like guiding us to the next best thing.
Exactly. A safety net for us flawed humans.
I like that. Way less stressful than chasing some impossible ideal all the time.
Right. It's about recognizing that ethical progress, it happens in steps. Sometimes the best thing is to aim for something we can actually achieve.
Okay, that's actually making me rethink some of my own choices.
I know, me too. It's like, maybe I don't need to beat myself up every time I don't reach some crazy ideal.
Yeah.
It's got to keep trying.
Yeah. Small steps toward being a better person.
Right.
Exactly.
But I bet some of our listeners are already objecting to this.
Oh, I'm sure.
Doesn't this, like, kind of give permission for bad behavior?
How so?
Like, if I know I'm never going to donate half my income to charity, is it okay to just aim for 10%?
That's the classic worry. Yeah.
Right. Like a loophole for laziness.
Exactly. But the people who like this idea, they'd say it's not about lowering standards.
Okay.
It's about being real and having a system for ethics that takes that into account, but still pushes us to do better. So it's nuanced. It gets that humans are messy.
Right.
This whole discussion is really making me think about how I make choices.
Me too.
It's not just about the right answer. It's about knowing myself, my habits, all that.
That's a huge part of it. And that's what we're trying to do here on the Deep Dive.
Right.
Explore these ideas in a way that's, fun and interesting, but also actually helpful for dealing with, like, the challenges of being a person.
Well said. We've covered so much ground today.
Yeah.
Actualism, possibilism.
Oh, yeah.
Conditional obligations, synchronic situations.
Don't forget maximalism and omnism.
Oh, yeah, those two. I'm going to need a nap in a philosophy textbook just to process all this.
It's a lot to take in, but that's what's so great about philosophy.
Right.
It makes you look at your own choices differently.
Okay.
And it reminds you that ethics isn't just rules in a book. It's about how we live our lives. Every single choice we make.
And that's something every single one of us has to deal with. So to our listeners out there, we'll leave you with this. Does knowing how you'll probably act in the future change what you're obligated to do right now?
Ooh, that's a good one. It brings together everything we talked about today.
It does. It's a question without an easy answer.
Definitely. But worth thinking about.
It is. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Until next time, keep thinking, keep reflecting, and keep making choices that make you proud. It's funny, right? We've been talking about all these theories, all these arguments.
Yeah.
And it just hits me how much, knowing ourselves matters for this whole ethics thing.
Oh, totally. Like, it's not just about the rules.
No. It's how those rules play out with, with us being human, all our messiness and stuff.
And that actually brings up another debate, kind of related to actualism and possibilism.
Oh, tell me more.
But it doesn't get talked about as much. It's this thing called maximalism versus omnism.
Maximalism versus omnism. Okay, I'm intrigued, but my brain's already kind of full from all the philosophy terms today.
Yeah, I hear ya, but this one's kind of fun. It's about how we judge our choices, especially when one choice kind of contains another one.
Give me an example, because I'm not quite picturing that.
Okay. So imagine someone offers you a soda.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That offer, in a way, includes the offer of a Coke, right? Because a Coke is a soda.
Right, yeah, it's like a category thing.
Exactly. So the bigger choice, taken the soda, contains that smaller choice of the Coke.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
Yeah.
So then the question is,
how do we decide if those choices are right or wrong when they're nested like that?
Right. Okay, now I see why this matters.
Exactly. So omnism says you got to judge every single choice on its own, totally separately.
Okay, so accepting the soda and accepting the Coke, those are two totally different things to judge.
Exactly. But maximalism
would zoom out, look at the big picture first.
You got it. Figure out if taking the soda is cool, then decide about the Coke, kind of based on that.
Interesting. So it's like top-down ethics. And I bet there are pros and cons to both.
Yeah.
Just like with actualism and possibilism.
You know it. So why would someone be for maximalism over omnism or the other way around?
Well, let me tell you, the maximalists, they point out that omnism gets real weird sometimes.
Oh. How so?
It can lead to, contradictions when you think about how choices actually happen in the world.
Okay, let's stick with the soda then.
Perfect. So imagine accepting the soda would actually lead you to drinking a Pepsi.
Mm-hmm.
Which, for some reason, is a bad choice in this case.
Okay, maybe you're trying to cut back on sugar.
Exactly. Or you made a promise to your dentist, whatever.
Those soda promises are tough to keep, I get it.
They are. So omnism would say, nope, don't accept the soda.
Because it's judging each choice separately, and that one leads to a bad outcome.
Right. But omnism would also say it's totally fine to accept a Coke.
Wait, so it's both wrong, ADD, okay to take a Coke? That doesn't make sense.
Right. And that's exactly the problem maximalists point out.
They're like, hold on. Got to look at the big picture first.
Yep. Got to look at that maximal choice.
Sure.
So if taking the soda is wrong because it leads to Pepsi Land,
then taking a Coke as part of that is also wrong.
You got it.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. You can't just pick the parts you like and ignore the consequences.
Exactly. But the omnists, they're not going to give up that easily.
Oh, I bet not. They always have a comeback.
Right. They'd say, hold on, maximalism is oversimplifying things.
Okay, I can see that.
What if you have lots of reasons for wanting a Coke? Not just because it's a soda.
Right, maybe you're super thirsty, or Coke is your favorite, or you want to share.
Exactly. So they're saying just focusing on the maximal choice ignores all those little details.
About why we do things, what we actually want.
Right. And that's where it gets really interesting, because it makes us think about how much weight to give to the big picture versus the little stuff.
Yeah, and how to balance those out when we're making, real-life choices. Man, this has been a whirlwind of ethics. We've talked about so much.
We have actualism, possibilism, those synchronic things.
Yeah.
Even maximalism versus omnism. Phew.
My head is spinning, but in a good way. I feel like my brain got to work out.
That's what we aim for. But remember, there's no one right answer in philosophy.
Yeah.
It's more about, opening up our minds, thinking critically, and becoming better decision makers in the end.
Yeah, and one thing that stuck with me through all this is how much we matter. Who we are, our strengths, our weaknesses, all of it.
It's not just about the rules. It's about us living them out.
Exactly. And that's actually kind of empowering, isn't it?
Totally. It means we have a say in this whole ethics thing. We can look at our own patterns, see where we might mess up, and try to do better.
It's like taking responsibility for our own ethical journey.
Right. Flaws and all. Trying to make choices that fit our values, even when it's tough.
Love it.
It's a journey we all got to take, right?
Yeah.
There's no easy answer, no perfect way to do it.
Right. But thinking about these things, questioning our ideas, that helps us be more, aware and responsible.
Exactly. More compassionate to ourselves and others, too.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into all this ethical stuff. Actualism, possibilism, all the rest. We hope you enjoyed it.
And we hope you keep exploring these ideas. It doesn't end here.
Right. So until next time, keep asking those tough questions, keep reflecting.
And keep making choices you can be proud of.